The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time this cycle, and Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony Fleet could feel the tension crackling through the massive chamber like electricity before a storm. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sectors, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic pulses, and harmonic vibrations that the universal translators worked overtime to process. "The readings are confirmed," announced Counselor Vethany, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights as she spoke. "Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving through the Outer Rim territories. These aren't natural phenomena." Fleet Commander Gorix slammed his forearms against his desk, causing several smaller council members to flinch. "Impossible. Nothing exists beyond the Barrier Nebula except dead systems and cosmic debris. We've sent probe after probe for centuries." "Perhaps your probes weren't looking hard enough," suggested Ambassador Yilseth from the collective, her insectoid features clicking with what passed for amusement among her species. "The energy signatures suggest technology far beyond anything in our databases." Admiral Zektar accessed his personal data pad, reviewing the sensor reports that had arrived just hours before the session. The numbers made no sense. Whatever was generating these readings possessed energy output levels that dwarfed even the hegemony's most advanced dreadnoughts. More troubling was the organized nature of the signatures. They moved in formation, suggesting intelligence and purpose. "We need to consider the possibility," said High Researcher Quintal, his massive brain visible through his transparent skull as he processed countless calculations simultaneously, "that we are not alone in ways we never imagined. These readings suggest not just one vessel, but an entire fleet." The chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had maintained diplomatic relations for millennia began shouting accusations across the void. The hegemony blamed the collective for secret weapons development. The Crystalline Dominion accused the neural network of hiding advanced technologies. Ancient rivalries surfaced as fear took hold. Through it all, Admiral Zektar remained silent, studying the data with growing unease. His species, the Korvaxi, had ruled the galaxy's military affairs for over 2,000 years. Their natural aggression and tactical brilliance had made them the obvious choice to command the combined fleets that maintained order among the stars. But these readings suggested something that challenged everything he understood about galactic power structures. Silence. The command came from Chancellor Mordek, whose species possessed natural psionic abilities that could override most forms of resistance. The chamber fell quiet as his mental pressure settled over the assembled delegates. "We will respond to this situation with logic and preparation, not panic and accusations." "What do we actually know?" asked Navigation Guild Master Thexai, her tentacles weaving complex patterns that her species used for emphasis. "Beyond energy signatures and movement patterns, what concrete information do we possess?" High Researcher Quintal's brain pulsed brighter as he accessed the collective database. "Preliminary analysis suggests the vessels utilize unknown propulsion technology. They appear to manipulate space-time in ways our physics models cannot explain. More concerning, they seem to be approaching our borders systematically, as if conducting reconnaissance or preparing for invasion." Admiral Zektar finally spoke, his gravelly voice carrying across the chamber. "My fleets have been monitoring the situation for weeks. Whatever these beings are, they're not randomly wandering. They're mapping our territories, testing our defenses, learning our patrol patterns." The admission sent another wave of anxiety through the council. If Admiral Zektar was concerned, the situation had moved beyond diplomatic curiosity into genuine threat assessment. "Recommendations?" Chancellor Mordek's mental voice touched each delegate simultaneously. "Deploy the Third Fleet to intercept." Admiral Zektar responded immediately. "Establish contact protocols, but maintain defensive postures. If these beings prove hostile, we need to demonstrate galactic unity and strength. And if they prove superior to our combined forces?" The question came from Ambassador Yilseth, though every delegate had been thinking the same thing. Admiral Zektar's predatory smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. "Then, we learn very quickly whether our assumptions about galactic supremacy were ever justified." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the largest combined fleet in galactic history began moving toward the Outer Rim territories. Admiral Zektar commanded from his flagship, the Dominance, a massive vessel that had served as the backbone of hegemony power for 3 centuries. Around him, ships from dozens of species formed attack formations that had been perfected through countless conflicts and police actions. Days passed as the fleet moved through hyperspace corridors that had been established long before most current civilizations had achieved space flight. Admiral Zektar used the time to study everything known about the Barrier Nebula region. Ancient records spoke of early exploration attempts that had simply vanished, leading to the area being declared off-limits and eventually forgotten. Sir, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Vexmore, approached with obvious nervousness. We're receiving updated sensor data from the advanced scouts. Admiral Zektar reviewed the information and felt his confidence waver for the first time in decades. The energy signatures weren't just moving randomly anymore. They were responding to the fleet's approach. Whatever intelligence guided these mysterious vessels had detected the galactic response and was taking action accordingly. How many? He asked quietly. Preliminary count suggests thousands, sir. Possibly tens of thousands. The bridge fell silent. Even the hegemony's entire military consisted of only several thousand major vessels spread across hundreds of systems. The idea that an unknown force possessed such numbers seemed impossible. Analysis of their technology? Admiral Zektar forced his voice to remain steady. Unknown energy sources, propulsion systems that seemed to bend space itself, and what appear to be weapon signatures unlike anything in our databases. Sir, they're not just technologically different. They seem to operate on entirely different scientific principles. Admiral Zektar made his decision with the cold calculation that had made him the galaxy's most feared military commander. Signal all ships. We maintain course and prepare for first contact. But we also prepare for war. The next several hours passed with agonizing tension as the combined fleet approached the coordinates where the mysterious vessels had last been detected. Long-range sensors painted a picture that defied belief, an organized armada of ships that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, their hulls reflecting energy signatures that suggested materials unknown to galactic science. Sir, we're being scanned, reported the sensor operator, his voice tight with stress. Multiple energy beams are analyzing our fleet composition, weapon systems, and defensive capabilities. They're being very thorough. Return the favor, Admiral Zektar commanded. I want to know everything about these ships that sensors can tell us. The results were both fascinating and terrifying. The mysterious vessels appeared to be constructed from materials that were simultaneously metallic and organic, their hulls shifting and adapting in real time. Their energy outputs suggested power systems that could dwarf small stars, yet they moved with precision that indicated incredible control and sophistication. Admiral, his communications officer called out suddenly. We're receiving a transmission. On screen, the main display flickered to life, showing what appeared to be the interior of one of the alien vessels. The chamber was clean and functional, with soft lighting that seemed almost welcoming. Then, the figure stepped into view, and Admiral Zektar felt the universe shift around him. It was bipedal, roughly the size of a Corvaxi, but with strange pale skin and hair that seemed to grow from its head in organized patterns. Its eyes were small but alert, containing an intelligence that was immediately recognizable despite the alien features. When it spoke, the words came through the universal translators with perfect clarity. Greetings. I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the human Starfleet. We've been monitoring your approach and appreciate your willingness to make contact. We come in peace, seeking dialogue and understanding. The simplicity of the statement was somehow more unsettling than any threat could have been. This being, this human, spoke as if first contact was a routine matter, as if commanding a fleet of impossible vessels was perfectly normal. I am Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Hegemony, he responded, falling back on standard first contact protocols. You have entered sovereign galactic space with a force that could be interpreted as hostile. Explain your intentions. The human's expression changed slightly, and Admiral Zektar realized it was displaying what might be amusement. Sovereign space? Admiral, with respect, We've been observing galactic activity for quite some time. Your borders encompass perhaps 5% of this galaxy's habitable systems. There's a much larger universe out here than you've discovered. The words hit like physical blows. The Galactic Council represented the known universe, the sum total of all intelligent life and technological achievement. The idea that they were merely a small pocket of civilization in a vast cosmos was impossible to accept. You claim to have been observing us, Admiral Zektar asked. Our sensors would have detected any surveillance. Would they? Admiral Chin's tone remained pleasant, almost conversational. Your technology is impressive for its level of development, but you're working with a fairly limited understanding of physics. We've had observation posts throughout your territory for decades, learning your languages, studying your cultures, preparing for eventual contact. Preparing for what purpose? To determine whether humanity should reveal itself to galactic civilization. Whether your species were ready for the knowledge that you're not alone in the universe. Admiral Zektar felt his tactical training take over, pushing aside the existential implications of the conversation. And your conclusion? Mixed results, Admiral Chin admitted. Your species show remarkable potential for cooperation when faced with external challenges. The formation of the Galactic Council and the peaceful resolution of the sector wars suggest you've learned to work together when necessary. However, your immediate military response to unknown contacts indicates you still default to aggressive solutions. A reasonable precaution when faced with an invasion fleet. Invasion fleet? The humans seemed genuinely surprised. Admiral, if humanity intended to invade your territory, this conversation would be academic. Our technology allows for strategic options that would make traditional warfare unnecessary. To demonstrate the point, every ship in the human fleet suddenly vanished from sensors, only to reappear instantaneously in completely different positions. They had moved through space in ways that violated every known law of physics, reorganizing their formation while surrounded by the galactic fleet as if the presence of thousands of hostile vessels was irrelevant. Impressive, Admiral Zektar said, though his voice betrayed none of his shock. But technology alone doesn't determine intentions. Why reveal yourselves now? Admiral Chin's expression became more serious. Because the galaxy is about to face challenges that will require cooperation between all intelligent species. There are threats moving through this region of space that your current technology and military doctrine cannot address. Humanity has been preparing for these challenges for centuries, but we cannot face them alone. What threats? That, Admiral, is a conversation for the Galactic Council. We formally request permission to address your leadership and share information that affects the survival of every civilization in this galaxy. Admiral Zektar found himself in completely uncharted territory. First contact protocols had been developed for encounters with primitive species or roughly equivalent civilizations, not for beings who casually demonstrated technological supremacy while speaking of galactic threats beyond current understanding. I will relay your request to the Council, he said finally. But understand that your presence here has already changed everything. The galaxy will never be the same. Change isn't always negative, Admiral, Admiral Chin replied. Sometimes it's the only path to survival. Humanity has learned that lesson many times throughout our history. As the transmission ended, Admiral Zektar stared at the main display showing the impossible human fleet. Ships that bent space itself, materials that defied analysis, beings who spoke of threats beyond galactic comprehension. The comfortable certainty of hegemony military supremacy had evaporated in the span of a single conversation. He opened a priority channel to the Galactic Council, knowing that his next words would reshape civilization itself. Council Command, this is Admiral Zektar. First contact has been established with a species calling themselves humans. They possess technology far beyond our understanding and claim knowledge of threats to galactic security. Recommend immediate emergency session to address unprecedented situation. The response came back within minutes. Admiral, return to Council space immediately with our guests. The fate of the galaxy may depend on what they have to tell us. As the massive fleet began turning toward home, Admiral Zektar wondered if the galaxy was about to meet its salvation or discover that everything they thought they knew about the universe had been an illusion. The humans had spoken of threats and cooperation, of observation and preparation, of challenges that required unity between species. Looking at his tactical displays showing the impossible human vessels keeping perfect formation alongside galactic ships, Admiral Zektar realized that the age of galactic innocence had ended. Whatever came next would test every assumption about civilization, technology, and humanity's place in the cosmos. The journey back to Council space would take days, but Admiral Zektar suspected those would be the last peaceful days the galaxy would know for a very long time. The Galactic Council chamber had been reconfigured for unprecedented circumstances. Additional seating accommodated representatives from every major and minor civilization, while enhanced security protocols kept the massive space under constant surveillance. Admiral Zektar stood at attention near the central platform, still processing the events of the past week. The human delegation had arrived exactly as promised, in vessels that made no sound and left no energy signatures. 3 humans had disembarked from what appeared to be a simple transport, though Admiral Zektar's sensors had detected technology within that single ship more advanced than anything in the galactic fleet. Admiral Sarah Chun led the delegation, flanked by 2 others she had introduced as Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in xenobiology and interspecies relations, and Commander James Park, whose exact function remained unclear but whose alert posture suggested military or security background. What struck Admiral Zektar most about the humans was their apparent comfort in the massive chamber surrounded by dozens of alien species. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no signs of being overwhelmed by their circumstances. Instead, they seemed genuinely curious about the various life forms they encountered, asking polite questions and showing what appeared to be authentic interest in galactic civilization. The floor recognizes Admiral Sarah Chun of the human Starfleet, Chancellor Mordek announced, his psionic voice carrying formal authority throughout the chamber. Admiral Chun stepped forward with easy confidence, her movements graceful in the chamber's slightly higher gravity. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive space without technological assistance. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, humanity thanks you for this opportunity to address your assembly. We come before you today not as conquerors or colonizers, but as neighbors who have been waiting for the right moment to introduce ourselves. Counselor Vethani's crystalline form chimed with harmonics that indicated skepticism. Waiting for what purpose, Admiral? Your technology clearly allows for contact at any time you choose. Because first contact, when mishandled, can destroy civilizations, Admiral Chun replied without hesitation. Humanity has made that mistake before in our own history. We've learned the importance of patience, of observation, of understanding before revealing ourselves to societies that might not be ready for expanded perspectives. High researcher Quintal's massive brain pulsed with computational activity. You speak of your own history. Explain this reference to previous mistakes. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. Throughout human development, our species encountered other human cultures with vastly different technological levels. Time and, again, contact between advanced and primitive societies led to the collapse of the less developed civilization. We've spent centuries studying these patterns, learning to recognize when contact will be beneficial rather than destructive. Are you suggesting, asked Ambassador Yilseth, her insectoid features clicking rapidly, that galactic civilization was considered too primitive for contact? Not primitive, Admiral Chin said carefully. Unprepared. Your species have achieved remarkable technological advancement and maintained stable interstellar government for millennia. But your understanding of physics, energy manipulation, and cosmic threats remained limited to your local region of space. Fleet Commander Gorix slammed his arms against his platform. Local region? We control thousands of systems across multiple galactic sectors. Commander Park spoke for the first time, his voice carrying quiet authority. Commander, your controlled space encompasses roughly 12% of this galaxy's mass. The systems you consider empty or uninhabitable often contain life forms and civilizations that operate on different physical principles than carbon-based biology. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates shouted translations of outrage, disbelief, and fear. The comfortable certainty that galactic civilization represented the pinnacle of cosmic achievement was crumbling with each revelation. Chancellor Mordek restored order through psionic pressure, his mental commands overriding the emotional outbursts. Continue your explanation, Admiral. What threats justify this revelation? Admiral Chun activated a device that projected a three-dimensional map of the galaxy above the central platform. The familiar territories of galactic civilization appeared as small clusters of light, but vast regions remained dark and unmarked. The Devourers swarm, Admiral Chen said simply, and the map showed massive red indicators moving between galactic arms. Silicon-based life forms that consume stellar energy and convert entire systems into raw materials for their expansion. They've already consumed 7 galaxies in this cluster and are moving toward this region of space. The projection zoomed in, showing the swarm's projected path. Even Admiral Zektar, with his tactical training and experience in large-scale military operations, felt his confidence evaporate. The red indicators suggested a force that numbered in the millions of vessels, each apparently capable of stripping entire solar systems. How long? Asked High Researcher Quintal, his computational abilities already working on trajectory calculations. 47 years until their scout elements reach your outer territories, Dr. Vasquez replied. 61 years until the main swarm arrives in galactic space. And humanity's plan for addressing this threat. Chancellor Mordek's mental voice carried carefully controlled tension. Preparation, Admiral Chen said. We've been building defenses, developing countermeasures, creating technologies specifically designed to combat swarm tactics and energy-based life forms. But the Devourers adapt quickly to new challenges. No single species, however advanced, can generate enough tactical diversity to stay ahead of their evolution. Fleet Commander Gorix leaned forward aggressively. You're asking for military alliance against this threat? We're offering partnership, Commander Park corrected. Humanity has technological advantages, but galactic civilization has something equally valuable. Dozens of different approaches to problem-solving, multiple perspectives on combat tactics, diverse scientific methodologies that could generate solutions we haven't considered. Admiral Zektar found himself speaking before he fully realized his intention. What makes you believe galactic forces could contribute meaningfully to this conflict? Admiral Chin's expression became something that might have been a smile. Because, Admiral, you've already proven you can work together when faced with external threats. The formation of this council, the peaceful integration of species with completely different biologies and cultures, the development of cooperative military doctrine, these achievements represent exactly the kind of adaptive flexibility needed to fight the swarm. But our technology can be upgraded, Dr. Vasquez interrupted. Humanity has been developing modular enhancement systems that can integrate with existing galactic technology. Your ships, your weapons, your defensive systems can all be improved without completely rebuilding your infrastructure. The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Advanced technology freely shared, but only in the context of preparing for galactic war against an enemy beyond current understanding. Demonstration, Chancellor Mordek commanded. Admiral Chin nodded to Commander Park, who activated another device. Instantly, every screen in the chamber showed detailed technical specifications for weapons, defensive systems, propulsion technologies, and energy sources that were beyond galactic comprehension. Gravitational manipulation drives that can move Dreadnought-class vessels at near-light speed, Commander Park explained casually. Energy shields that can deflect stellar-level attacks. Weapons that can disrupt the quantum bonds holding matter together. Manufacturing systems that can convert raw stellar material into finished starships in a matter of weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. Even species that had considered themselves technologically sophisticated were staring at technical specifications that represented centuries of advancement beyond their current capabilities. The cost? Asked Navigation Guild Master Thexai, her tentacles weaving patterns of deep suspicion. Full integration into humanity's defensive network, Admiral Chen replied. Shared command structures for the duration of the swarm crisis. Complete technological exchange in both directions. And acceptance that after the crisis, galactic civilization will be fundamentally changed. Changed how? Ambassador Yilseth demanded. Dr. Vasquez gestured to the galactic map, which now showed dozens of star clusters beyond the current borders of known space. Because you'll have the technology and knowledge to expand into the 90% of the galaxy you haven't yet explored. You'll encounter civilizations that make current contact protocols seem primitive. You'll discover forms of life that exist in gas giants, in the cores of stars, in the quantum foam between dimensions. We'll become a spacefaring civilization in the truest sense, Admiral Chen continued. No longer limited to the small cluster of worlds you currently inhabit, but capable of exploring and interacting with the galaxy's true diversity. The implications were staggering. Expansion on an unprecedented scale, contact with unimaginable life forms, technologies that would render current scientific understanding obsolete. And at the center of it all, preparation for a war against enemies that consumed galaxies. Vote, Chancellor Mordek announced. All in favor of formal alliance with humanity for mutual defense against the Devourer swarm. The voting proceeded species by species, with translation systems working frantically to convey each civilization's complex decision-making processes. Admiral Zektar watched the tallies appear on the main display, knowing that each affirmative vote represented a fundamental transformation of everything he had known about the universe. When the final count appeared, the result was overwhelming. 43 species voted for alliance, with only 4 abstentions and no negative votes. The alliance is approved, Chancellor Mordek announced. Admiral Chen, humanity is formally welcomed into the Galactic Council and appointed to joint command of all defensive preparations. What followed was controlled chaos as representatives from every major military organization surrounded the human delegation with questions about implementation, technology transfer, training protocols, and command structures. Admiral Zektar found himself assigned as primary liaison between human forces and the Galactic Fleet, a position that would require him to fundamentally rethink everything he understood about space warfare. Admiral Chen approached him as the formal session ended. I know this is overwhelming. Your entire universe just expanded exponentially. An understatement, Admiral Zektar replied. My species has controlled galactic military affairs for 2 millennia. Now we discover we're junior partners in a cosmos we never imagined. Not junior partners, Admiral Chen corrected. Different partners. Humanity has technological advantages, but we lack the diversity of perspectives that made galactic civilization possible. Your tactical doctrines, your species-specific capabilities, your cultural approaches to conflict resolution, these are all essential for what's coming. The Devourer swarm. Among other challenges, the swarm is the most immediate threat, but it's not the only one. This region of space is about to become much more crowded as civilizations from across the galaxy discover each other. Admiral Zektar processed this information with growing unease. How many other civilizations? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. The galaxy is far more populated than your current surveys suggest. Most have been avoiding contact with your region because your technology wasn't advanced enough for meaningful interaction. And now you're about to become players on the galactic stage. The question is whether you're ready for that responsibility. As Admiral Zektar looked around the chamber at delegates who were still struggling to process the magnitude of what had been revealed, he wondered the same thing. The galactic civilization that had seemed so advanced and sophisticated just hours ago now felt like children playing with toys compared to the vast cosmos that surrounded them. When do we begin? He asked finally. Immediately, Admiral Chen replied. The first technology transfers arrive tomorrow. Fleet command integration begins within the week. And Admiral? She paused, her expression becoming serious. Everything you think you know about space warfare is about to change. The Devourers don't fight like anything in your experience. They don't use tactics or strategies in any sense you'd recognize. They adapt, they consume, they evolve in real time during combat. How does humanity fight such an enemy? By becoming something they can't predict or adapt to. By combining so many different approaches, technologies, and tactics that they can't evolve fast enough to counter them all. Admiral Chen gestured toward the diverse assembly of galactic representatives. That's why we need all of you. Every species, every perspective, every unique approach to problem solving. As Admiral Zektar watched the human delegation move through the chamber, answering questions with patience and precision, he realized that the galaxy's greatest military challenge was about to become its greatest opportunity for unity. The Devourer swarm threatened extinction, but it also offered the chance to forge a civilization capable of exploring and protecting the true galaxy. The age of galactic innocence was indeed over. What came next would test every species' capacity for adaptation, cooperation, and growth. But for the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Zektar felt something approaching optimism. Humanity had waited decades to reveal themselves, preparing for this moment when galactic civilization would need to evolve or face extinction. Now that moment had arrived, and the real work could begin. The integration facility orbiting Kepler Station represented everything Admiral Zektar thought he understood about impossible engineering. 3 months after first contact, the massive structure had been constructed using human manufacturing technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level, creating specialized environments for every galactic species while housing the largest military cooperation project in recorded history. Admiral Zektar moved through corridors that automatically adjusted their atmospheric composition, gravity, and lighting as he passed. Ahead of him walked Commander James Park, whose role had expanded far beyond security into something approaching cultural translation. The human seemed equally comfortable discussing quantum mechanics with crystalline Dominion scientists as he did tactical doctrine with hegemony war planners. The first joint exercises exceeded all expectations, Commander Park was saying as they approached the main observation deck. Your species' natural tactical instincts combined with human technology are producing results we hadn't anticipated. Through the massive transparent aluminum viewport, Admiral Zektar could see the most incredible sight in galactic history. Hundreds of vessels moved through complex maneuvers that would have been impossible just months ago. Hegemony dreadnoughts, their hulls now enhanced with human gravitational manipulators, danced through space with the grace of fighters. Collective hive ships, upgraded with quantum communication networks, coordinated attacks across light years of space with perfect timing. Most impressive were the hybrid vessels, new ship designs that combined the best of galactic engineering with human technological advances. The USS Cooperation, a joint human-galactic project, served as the flagship for integrated operations. Its hull incorporated crystalline Dominion energy channeling materials, hegemony armor plating, collective distributed processing systems, and human quantum drive technology. The adaptation rate has been remarkable. Admiral Chen's voice came from behind them as she joined the observation. Your crews are mastering new technologies faster than our most optimistic projections suggested. Necessity accelerates learning, Admiral Zektar replied, watching a squad of fighters equipped with human phase shift generators simply disappear from normal space before reappearing behind their target drones. How long until we're ready for real combat? That depends on what you mean by ready. Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from a nearby laboratory, her hands still stained with what appeared to be exotic matter. If you're asking when galactic forces will be capable of engaging Devourer scouts in direct combat, the answer is approximately 6 months. And the main swarm? Dr. Vasquez's expression became more serious. That's a different question entirely. The scouts use tactics we understand, even if their technology is advanced. The main swarm operates according to principles that challenge basic assumptions about warfare itself. Commander Park activated a holographic display that showed the latest intelligence on Devourer forces. The images were disturbing, massive entities that seemed to be part machine, part organism, part energy construct. They moved through space like living things, but their hulls showed technological modifications that suggested intelligence and purpose. Individual Devourer units are approximately the size of large asteroids, Commander Park explained. They can reconfigure themselves for different functions: exploration, resource harvesting, combat, or reproduction. A single unit can strip mine an entire planet in weeks, then use those materials to create dozens of offspring. How does one fight such creatures? Admiral Zektar asked, his tactical mind struggling to process enemies that could literally consume their own casualties and convert them into additional forces. By thinking beyond traditional warfare, Admiral Chen replied. The Devourers adapt to any conventional attack pattern within hours. Their intelligence is distributed across the entire swarm, so destroying individual units doesn't significantly impact their collective capabilities. Standard military doctrine becomes irrelevant. Then, what approach does work? Chaos, Dr. Vasquez said simply. Unpredictability. Attacks that follow no pattern they can analyze and adapt to. That's why we need galactic civilizations diversity. Every species approaches problems differently, thinks about solutions from unique perspectives. The more varied our tactics, the harder it becomes for the swarm to develop countermeasures. To demonstrate the point, the holographic display showed recent war game scenarios. Human forces using advanced technology fought with mathematical precision. Hegemony forces relied on aggressive frontal assaults enhanced by superior firepower. Collective units coordinated complex multi-stage attacks across vast distances. Crystalline Dominion ships used energy manipulation to turn enemy weapons against themselves. Separately, each approach has weaknesses that swarm intelligence could exploit, Commander Park continued. But, combined, in constantly shifting combinations, they create tactical scenarios too complex for rapid adaptation. Admiral Zektar studied the tactical data with growing understanding. You're describing warfare as improvisation rather than doctrine. Exactly, Admiral Chen confirmed. The ability to change strategies in real time, to combine approaches that shouldn't work together, to maintain tactical flexibility even when facing overwhelming odds. It's the opposite of everything traditional military training teaches. A priority communication alert interrupted the discussion. The central display activated to show High Researcher Quintal, his massive brain pulsing with computational urgency. Admiral Chen, Admiral Zektar, we've received disturbing intelligence from the deep space monitoring stations. Quintal's voice carried across multiple communication channels simultaneously. The Devourer Advanced Scouts have accelerated their approach vector. They're moving faster than previous projections indicated. How much faster? Admiral Chen asked immediately. Timeline has been compressed by 18 months. Scout elements will reach outer galactic territories within 6 months instead of the originally calculated 2 years. The implications hit Admiral Zektar like a physical blow. 6 months to prepare for enemies that could adapt to any tactical doctrine, using technology that was still being integrated into galactic forces, with crews that were just learning to operate hybrid systems. Options? He asked, falling back on military training to process the crisis. We accelerate everything, Dr. Vasquez replied without hesitation. Crash integration programs, emergency technology transfers, immediate deployment of partially trained forces to establish defensive perimeters. Or, Admiral Chun added quietly, we consider alternatives to purely defensive strategies. Commander Park's expression became grim. You're suggesting preemptive action? I'm suggesting we meet them before they reach inhabited systems, Admiral Chen clarified. Choose the battlefield rather than allowing them to choose it for us. Admiral Zektar felt his tactical instincts engaging. Deep space engagement. Force them to fight on our terms rather than allowing them to establish resource bases in galactic territory. Precisely. But it means deploying forces with incomplete training, using technologies that haven't been fully tested, and fighting the first real engagement against Devourer scouts without the luxury of learning from smaller encounters. The strategic implications were staggering. Instead of months of careful preparation and training, galactic forces would need to be ready for combat operations in weeks. The margin for error had essentially disappeared. Recommendations for immediate implementation? Admiral Zektar asked, his command training taking over despite the unprecedented circumstances. Dr. Vasquez pulled up manufacturing schedules and resource allocation charts. Priority goes to gravitational drive installation on all major vessels. Without enhanced mobility, galactic ships can't engage Devourer units effectively. Secondary priority is quantum communication networks for real-time coordination across light years of engagement space. Weapon systems? Admiral Zektar continued. Modular approach, Commander Park replied. Each ship gets a basic package of human energy weapons plus species-specific enhancements. Hegemony vessels receive enhanced armor-penetrating systems. Collective ships get swarm-fighting wide-area weapons. Crystalline ships receive energy redirection amplifiers. Training protocols? Admiral Chen activated another series of displays showing accelerated learning programs. Virtual reality simulations based on actual Devourer encounter data. Crews can experience months of combat training in days of subjective time. It's not perfect, but it's the best option given our timeline constraints. Admiral Zektar studied the implementation schedules with growing concern. These timelines assume perfect efficiency and no technical difficulties. Real-world complications could delay readiness by weeks. Which is why, Admiral Chun said seriously, we're implementing redundant backup plans. Multiple defensive lines, fallback positions prepared in advance, and contingency protocols for every major system failure we can anticipate. And if the scouts prove more advanced than current intelligence suggests, then we learn very quickly whether the Galactic Alliance was strong enough to survive its first real test. Over the following weeks, Admiral Zektar watched the most incredible mobilization in galactic history. Shipyards that had operated on peacetime schedules for centuries began working around the clock. Crews that had never left their home systems found themselves training for combat in deep space. Species that had maintained careful diplomatic distance for millennia suddenly found themselves sharing technology, tactics, and living space in unprecedented cooperation. The transformation was remarkable, but also fragile. Admiral Zektar could see the stress points where different approaches to military organization created friction. Human emphasis on individual initiative conflicted with collective preference for distributed consensus. Hegemony aggressive tactics clashed with crystalline dominion defensive philosophies. The diversity that makes us tactically unpredictable also makes us organizationally vulnerable, he observed to Admiral Chun during one of their daily coordination meetings. True, she agreed. But that's also why we're keeping command structures flexible. Units can reorganize in real time based on tactical requirements rather than being locked into rigid hierarchies. And if communication breaks down during combat, then individual commanders make decisions based on their species' strengths and training. Organized chaos rather than paralyzed coordination. It was, Admiral Zektar realized, a completely different approach to large-scale military operations. Instead of the careful planning and rigid execution that had characterized galactic warfare for millennia, they were preparing for combat that resembled improvised performance more than traditional battle. Final question, he said. What happens if we win? Admiral Chin's expression became thoughtful. Then, galactic civilization proves it can adapt to challenges beyond its original scope. The alliance becomes permanent, not just a crisis response. And we begin preparing for the next challenge, which is the main Devourer swarm. Because the scouts, Admiral, are just the beginning. As Admiral Zektar looked out at the hybrid fleet conducting final training exercises, he realized that victory against the scouts would simply prove galactic forces were ready to begin the real war. Everything they were learning, every adaptation they were making, every tactical innovation they developed would be tested against enemies that could literally consume failed strategies and evolve beyond them. The galactic civilization that emerged from this crisis would be fundamentally different from the one that had existed before first contact with humanity. Whether that transformation would be evolution or extinction remained to be determined in the depths of space, where the first shots of an interstellar war would soon be fired. The Deep Space Monitoring Station, designated Outpost Zenith, had been humanity's most advanced early warning system until 3 days ago, when its automated distress beacon began transmitting a signal that chilled Admiral Zektar to his core. The message was simple and terrifying. Devourer scouts detected. Contact imminent. Station compromised. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned USS Cooperation, watching the massive viewscreen display tactical data that defied belief. The Joint Galactic Human Fleet had arrived at Outpost Zenith's coordinates to find empty space where a sophisticated monitoring facility should have been, and energy signatures that suggested something had literally consumed the entire installation. Debris analysis? He asked Lieutenant Commander Vexmore, who was manning the enhanced sensor station with equipment that could detect quantum-level disturbances. Minimal debris field, sir. What remains suggests the station wasn't destroyed in any conventional sense. It appears to have been processed, converted into component materials, and absorbed. Admiral Sarah Chun approached from her position at the Joint Command Station, her expression grim as she reviewed the sensor data. Devourer work, she confirmed. They don't waste energy on destruction when consumption is more efficient. How long? Admiral Zektar asked. Based on the quantum decay patterns, the station was consumed approximately 18 hours ago. The scouts are moving faster than our most pessimistic projections. The implications were staggering. Outpost Zenith had been equipped with the most advanced defensive systems in the galactic arsenal, enhanced with human technology that should have made it nearly impregnable. If the scouts could consume such a facility in hours, what hope did planetary defense systems have? Contact reports from the forward perimeter. Admiral Chun called to the communications station. Negative contact from stations Echo, Gamma, and Theta 7. Came the response from Ensign Kolthara, her crystalline features refracting worry as harmonic vibrations. All stations have missed their scheduled check-ins by over 4 hours. Admiral Zektar felt the tactical situation crystallizing with horrible clarity. The Devourer scouts weren't advancing in the predictable pattern their models had suggested. Instead, they were systematically eliminating the early warning network, creating blind zones in galactic defenses while gathering intelligence on human technology integration. They're learning, he said quietly. Worse, Dr. Elena Vasquez added from her position at the science station. They're adapting. The energy signatures we're detecting suggest modification of their base capabilities in response to the defensive systems they've encountered. Admiral Chun activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels, this is Admiral Chun. Execute Protocol 7. Maximum dispersal, random patrol patterns, full sensor sweeps of designated sectors. We're hunting an enemy that's already studying us. The response was immediate and impressive. 300 ships from a dozen different species spread across light years of space, each group employing different search patterns and technologies. Hegemony vessels used aggressive wide-range scans that could penetrate most stealth systems. Collective ships deployed sensor networks that created overlapping detection grids. Crystalline ships used energy resonance techniques that could identify disruptions in space-time itself. Admiral, Commander James Park called from the tactical station. We're receiving priority transmission from Galactic Command. Chancellor Mordek is requesting immediate strategic conference. The main screen activated to show the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives who had seemed so confident during the alliance negotiations now displayed obvious stress as reports of consumed outposts continued to arrive. Admiral Chun, Admiral Zektar. Chancellor Mordek's psionic voice carried across space with unusual tension. The situation has deteriorated beyond our contingency planning. 7 monitoring stations have gone silent in the past 6 hours. The scouts are advancing on multiple vectors simultaneously. High researcher Quintal's massive brain pulsed with frantic calculations. Trajectory analysis suggests coordinated assault on our primary defensive installations. They're not simply exploring our territory, they're systematically dismantling our ability to monitor their advance. Recommendations? Admiral Chun asked immediately. Immediate fallback to secondary defensive positions. Fleet Commander Orcs responded aggressively. Consolidate forces around core systems and prepare for siege warfare. Negative. Admiral Zektar interrupted, his tactical training overriding diplomatic protocol. Defensive consolidation plays to their strengths. They excel at consuming static positions. We need mobility, unpredictability, constant tactical variation. Explain, Chancellor Mordek commanded. Admiral Chun stepped forward. The scouts are adapting to our technology by studying our fixed installations. Every outpost they consume provides data about our capabilities and defensive doctrine. If we consolidate around major systems, we're giving them perfect laboratories to develop countermeasures. Alternative strategy? Asked Ambassador Yilseth. Deep space harassment, Admiral Zektar replied. Mobile task forces conducting hit-and-run operations across multiple sectors. Force them to adapt to constantly changing tactical scenarios while gathering intelligence on their capabilities. Dr. Vasquez added technical context. Our advantage lies in tactical diversity. The more different approaches we use simultaneously, the harder it becomes for them to develop comprehensive countermeasures. But only if we maintain operational flexibility. Approved, Chancellor Mordek decided. Admiral Chun, Admiral Zektar, you have full authority to conduct operations as you see fit. The Council will coordinate civilian evacuations from Outer Rim territories. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zektar with command responsibility for the largest military operation in galactic history. Around him, the bridge crew worked with remarkable efficiency despite representing 4 different species with completely different approaches to command structures. Task Force deployment? Commander Park asked. Mixed units. Admiral Zektar replied immediately. Human hegemony assault groups for direct engagement. Collective crystalline reconnaissance teams for long-range detection. Each force operates independently with overlapping patrol areas. Communication protocols? Admiral Chun considered the question carefully. Quantum burst transmissions every 6 hours unless engaged in active operations. If any task force makes contact, they immediately transmit full tactical data to all other units before engaging. Rules of engagement? Asked Lieutenant Commander Vexmore. Probe, harass, and withdraw. Admiral Zektar replied. Primary objective is intelligence gathering. Secondary objective is disrupting their advance. Tertiary objective is testing their adaptation rates to different attack patterns. And if they prove too strong for harassment tactics, then we learn that information before committing larger forces, Admiral Chun said grimly. Over the following hours, Admiral Zektar watched the most complex military deployment in galactic history unfold across his tactical displays. Dozens of mixed-species task forces spread across thousands of cubic light-years of space, each one representing a different approach to the coming conflict. The first contact report came from Task Force 7, a combined human hegemony unit operating near the former position of Outpost Echo. Commander Vatheke's transmission crackled with combat stress as he reported engaging 3 Devourer scouts. Targets are larger than intelligence suggested, came the report. Approximately 8 kilometers in length, highly maneuverable despite their size. They're adapting to our attack patterns in real time. Weapon effectiveness? Admiral Chun asked immediately. Human phase cannons are penetrating their hulls, but causing minimal damage. They appear to be regenerating faster than we can inflict significant harm. Hegemony plasma batteries are more effective, but they're developing countermeasures. Tactical assessment. Sir, they're learning from every attack we make. Their defensive capabilities are improving throughout the engagement. Recommend immediate withdrawal and tactical reassessment. Admiral Zektar authorized the withdrawal, but the implications were disturbing. If individual Devourer scouts could adapt to combined human galactic weapons in real time, how would larger forces fare against the main swarm? Analysis of engagement data, Dr. Vasquez called out as she processed the sensor readings transmitted from Task Force 7. The scouts are definitely modified from their base configuration, she reported. They've enhanced their defensive systems specifically to counter the energy signatures they detected from consumed outposts. But the modifications appear to reduce their efficiency in other areas. Exploitable weaknesses? Admiral Chun asked. Possibly. Their adaptation appears to be reactive rather than predictive. They modify themselves to counter immediate threats, but may become vulnerable to attacks they haven't encountered yet. Admiral Zektar felt a tactical insight forming. Rotation strategy. Multiple task forces engage the same targets using completely different weapon systems and tactics. Force them to constantly readapt instead of optimizing for specific threats. Brilliant, Commander Park agreed. Keep them in a state of continuous modification, never allowing them to achieve stable countermeasures. The next several engagements tested this theory. Task Force 3 used crystalline energy redirection weapons. Task Force 11 employed collective swarm tactics with microtorpedoes. Task Force 18 combined human gravitational weapons with hegemony kinetic bombardment. Each engagement provided valuable intelligence. The Devourer scouts were indeed adapting to specific attack patterns, but the constant variation in tactics was forcing them to develop increasingly complex and energy-intensive countermeasures. They're becoming less efficient, Dr. Vasquez reported after analyzing the accumulated engagement data. Each adaptation requires significant energy expenditure. Their mobility is decreasing, their response times are extending, their regeneration rates are slowing. How many different tactical approaches can we sustain? Admiral Zektar asked. Admiral Chen considered the question while reviewing force deployment charts. With the diversity of galactic military doctrine, we can maintain tactical variation for months. Every species contributes unique approaches that the scouts haven't encountered. Then, we've found our strategy, Admiral Zektar concluded. Systematic rotation of forces and tactics, constant pressure without allowing them to establish stable countermeasures, intelligence gathering to prepare for the main swarm's arrival. And if the main swarm proves immune to adaptation stress, then we'll have learned everything possible about devourer capabilities and weaknesses before facing an enemy that could consume entire sectors, Admiral Chen replied. As Admiral Zektar watched the tactical displays showing dozens of engagements across multiple star systems, he realized they were pioneering completely new forms of warfare. Instead of seeking decisive battles or territorial control, they were conducting a campaign of controlled chaos designed to exhaust enemy adaptation capabilities. It was warfare as evolution in reverse, forcing the enemy to become increasingly specialized and vulnerable rather than allowing them to achieve optimal efficiency. The success of this strategy would determine whether galactic civilization survived its first contact with truly cosmic-scale threats. Admiral Zektar found himself hoping that the diversity and adaptability that made galactic cooperation so challenging would prove to be the very qualities that ensured its survival. The real test would come when the main Devourer swarm arrived to find scouts that had been systematically overloaded by tactical diversity beyond their ability to counter. Whether that would represent victory or merely the end of the opening phase of an interstellar war remained to be determined. But, for now, Admiral Zektar was content to watch galactic civilization prove it could fight as creatively as it could cooperate. The quantum communication array aboard the USS Cooperation buzzed with incoming reports from across the galaxy, each transmission bringing news that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Admiral Zektar stood before the massive tactical display, watching real-time updates from 47 different star systems where galactic forces were engaged in the largest coordinated military operation in recorded history. Final intelligence reports from the Scout harassment campaign, Dr. Elena Vasquez announced as she processed the accumulated data from 6 months of constant skirmishing. The adaptation overload strategy has exceeded all projections. Admiral Sarah Chen joined them at the central console, her expression mixing satisfaction with concern. Show us the tactical summary. The display shifted to show a comprehensive analysis of Devourer Scout capabilities. Where the initial encounters had revealed terrifyingly adaptive enemies, the current data painted a different picture entirely. Continuous tactical rotation has forced the scouts to develop 37 different defensive configurations, Dr. Vasquez explained. Each modification reduced their efficiency in other areas. Their current regeneration rate is 60% below baseline. Mobility is down 43%, and their adaptation response time has increased by over 200%. In essence, Commander James Park added from his analysis station, we've forced them to become specialized rather than adaptable. They can counter specific threat types very effectively, but they've lost their ability to respond quickly to new challenges. Admiral Zektar studied the tactical implications with growing confidence. They've become predictable? More than that, Admiral Chen replied. They've become vulnerable. Our scouts report that individual Devourer units are now locked into specific configurations for up to 18 hours before they can readapt. A long enough window for coordinated strikes using tactics they haven't prepared for. But, Dr. Vasquez continued with obvious concern, long-range sensors are detecting the main swarm's approach. They'll arrive in approximately 3 weeks, and our intelligence suggests they've been receiving continuous data updates from the scouts. The celebration of tactical success suddenly felt premature. Admiral Zektar realized they had been fighting the reconnaissance force, learning valuable lessons about Devourer capabilities, but the real enemy was still approaching with full knowledge of everything galactic forces had revealed about themselves. Analysis of main swarm composition? He asked. Commander Park activated additional displays showing sensor data from the deep space monitoring networks that had been hastily re-established at maximum range. Approximately 50,000 major units, each one significantly larger than the Scouts. Multiple ship classes suggesting specialized functions we haven't encountered yet. And Admiral, he paused, his expression becoming grim. They're traveling with what appears to be a manufacturing fleet. Manufacturing capabilities? Admiral Chen asked immediately. Based on energy signatures and formation patterns, they can apparently construct new units during their advance. They're not just bringing an invasion force. They're bringing the ability to expand that force using any materials they encounter. The implications were staggering. Even if galactic forces could destroy significant portions of the main swarm, the survivors could potentially rebuild their losses using the debris from destroyed planets and space installations. Recommended strategy? Admiral Zektar asked, falling back on military protocol to process the overwhelming tactical challenge. Everything we've learned about forcing adaptation overload on a scale 50 times larger, Admiral Chen replied. But coordinated across the entire galaxy with perfect timing and unprecedented cooperation between species that have never fought together in major battles. Galactic command status? Commander Park inquired. Full mobilization authorized, came the response from the communications station. Every major fleet, every defensive installation, every mobile platform is being coordinated into the largest military formation in galactic history. Chancellor Mordek has transferred all strategic authority to Joint Human Galactic Command. Admiral Zektar felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. In 3 weeks, he would be helping to command forces numbering in the tens of thousands of ships, representing every major civilization in known space, fighting an enemy that could consume entire star systems. Fleet disposition? He asked. Admiral Chun activated the strategic overview, showing ship positions across dozens of star systems. Tiered defense with maximum tactical diversity. First contact line uses our fastest, most maneuverable units to implement harassment tactics on a massive scale. Second line deploys heavy assault groups to exploit weaknesses identified by first contact. Third line maintains strategic reserves with our most experimental weapons and tactics. And if all 3 lines fail to stop the main swarm, then we implement the final contingency, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. Operation Diaspora. Mass evacuation of all populated systems to prepared refuge points in the galactic outer rim while specialist teams conduct guerrilla warfare against Devourer occupation forces. Admiral Zektar had read the Diaspora protocols, and they represented the admission that galactic civilization might not survive in its current form. Billions of beings scattered across hidden bases, reduced to survival while hoping to eventually reclaim their home systems from cosmic predators. Alternative scenarios? He asked. Victory, Admiral Chun said simply. Prove that intelligence, cooperation, and tactical flexibility can overcome raw consumption efficiency. Demonstrate that diverse civilizations working together can generate solutions that no single species could achieve. And if we succeed, then galactic civilization becomes something unprecedented in this region of space. A coordinated multi-species entity capable of defending against cosmic-scale threats while exploring and interacting with the galaxy's true diversity. Over the following days, Admiral Zektar watched the most remarkable mobilization in galactic history. Species that had maintained careful neutrality for millennia suddenly found themselves integrating their military forces with ancient rivals. Technical specifications that had been classified state secrets were being shared freely among allies who had never fought together. Cultural differences that had seemed insurmountable were being set aside in favor of tactical cooperation. The hegemony contributed their most advanced dreadnoughts, enhanced with human gravitational weapons and crystalline energy channeling systems. The collective provided swarm fighting capabilities that could coordinate attacks across light years of space with perfect timing. The Crystalline Dominion offered defensive technologies that could protect entire fleets from energy-based attacks. Most importantly, dozens of smaller civilizations contributed specialized capabilities that added crucial elements to the overall tactical mixture. Species with unique approaches to mathematics provided targeting algorithms. Civilizations with exotic sensory capabilities offered detection systems that could track devourer units through multiple dimensions. Ancient cultures with experience in asymmetric warfare contributed tactics that had been developed over millennia of interstellar conflict. Final force composition, Admiral Zektar asked as the last units moved into position. 87,000 vessels representing 43 different species, Commander Park reported. More tactical diversity than the Devourers have ever encountered, with coordination capabilities they can't predict or adapt to quickly. Command structure? Distributed authority based on tactical specialization, Admiral Chen explained. Each species commands operations that utilize their unique advantages, with real-time coordination through quantum communication networks. No single point of failure, no predictable command hierarchy for the enemy to target. Rules of engagement? Controlled chaos, Admiral Zektar replied, using the tactical doctrine they had developed through months of planning. Every unit maintains operational independence while contributing to coordinated strategic objectives. Maximum unpredictability, constant tactical innovation, continuous adaptation to enemy countermeasures. The first long-range sensor contacts came exactly 3 weeks after the final preparations had been completed. Admiral Zektar watched the tactical displays as Devourer units began appearing at the edge of galactic space, their massive energy signatures dwarfing anything the scouts had demonstrated. Contact report. Came the transmission from the first detection grid. Main swarm elements entering Sector 7. Estimated 53,000 major units, multiple ship classes, confirmed manufacturing capabilities. They're beginning systematic advance toward core galactic systems. First-line response. Admiral Chen called. Implementing harassment protocol on maximum scale. Came the coordinated response from a dozen different task force commanders. Engaging with full tactical rotation, maximum diversity, continuous pressure. Admiral Zektar watched the first engagements begin across multiple star systems simultaneously. Instead of the careful probing that had characterized the scout battles, this was warfare on a scale that strained comprehension. Thousands of ships engaging enemies that individually outmassed entire galactic fleets, using tactics that combined the military doctrines of dozens of different civilizations. The initial results were mixed but encouraging. Devourer units that attempted to adapt to hegemony assault tactics found themselves vulnerable to collective swarm attacks. Units that reconfigured to counter human energy weapons became susceptible to crystalline redirection techniques. The constant tactical variation was preventing the enemy from achieving stable countermeasures. Adaptation analysis? Dr. Vasquez called as she processed real-time combat data. "They're struggling," came her excited response. "The scale and diversity of attacks is overwhelming their adaptation algorithms. Individual units are cycling through defensive configurations without achieving optimization for any specific threat type." Damage assessment. Galactic forces are taking casualties, but maintaining operational effectiveness. Devourer forces are suffering significant losses without the rapid replacement rates we observed during scout operations. Admiral Zektar allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. The strategy was working on a larger scale than they had dared hope. The diversity that had made galactic cooperation so challenging was proving to be exactly the advantage needed to fight enemies that excelled at adapting to predictable opposition. Second-line deployment? Admiral Chun asked as the first phase of the battle continued to develop. Implementing heavy assault protocols, Admiral Zektar replied. Focus on devourer units that have been forced into suboptimal configurations by first-line harassment. Exploit adaptation vulnerabilities with concentrated firepower. The battle raged across multiple star systems for days, with the tide shifting constantly as new tactics were deployed and countered. But gradually, a pattern emerged that filled Admiral Zektar with something he hadn't expected: genuine confidence in victory. The Devourer swarm, for all their individual power and adaptation capabilities, had never encountered opposition that could maintain tactical diversity on the scale galactic civilization was demonstrating. Their intelligence was designed to identify patterns and develop countermeasures, but galactic forces were generating new patterns faster than countermeasures could be developed. Final assault phase? Admiral Chen asked as Devourer forces began showing signs of systematic breakdown. Coordinate all remaining forces for simultaneous attack on their manufacturing units, Admiral Zektar ordered. Eliminate their ability to rebuild from losses and force a strategic withdrawal. The final phase of the battle was the most intense combat in galactic history. Every ship, every weapon system, every tactical innovation developed over months of preparation was brought to bear simultaneously. The diversity of approaches created attack patterns that no single enemy, however adaptive, could counter comprehensively. When the Devourer swarm finally began its withdrawal, Admiral Zektar realized that galactic civilization had achieved something unprecedented. They had not just survived contact with a cosmic-scale threat. They had proven that cooperation and diversity could overcome even the most formidable individual capabilities. Strategic assessment? He asked as the last enemy units disappeared beyond sensor range. Complete tactical victory, Dr. Vasquez reported. Devourer forces suffered catastrophic losses and withdrew beyond galactic borders. Their adaptation capabilities were overwhelmed by sustained tactical diversity. Most importantly, they transmitted clear signals that this region of space is defended by forces capable of coordinating resistance on a galactic scale. Admiral Chen smiled with satisfaction, which means other cosmic threats will think twice before testing our defenses. And galactic civilization? Admiral Zektar asked, has proven it can work together to achieve the impossible, Admiral Chen replied. The alliance forged during this crisis isn't temporary anymore. It's the foundation for expansion into the broader galaxy. As Admiral Zektar looked at the tactical displays showing the largest coordinated fleet in galactic history, he realized that humanity's arrival had indeed changed everything. But not in the way anyone had originally expected. Instead of bringing advanced technology to primitive civilizations, they had helped galactic society discover its own potential for greatness. The galaxy that emerged from the Devourer crisis would be fundamentally different from the one that had existed before first contact. More united, more capable, more ready to explore the vast cosmos that lay beyond their previous boundaries. And somewhere in the depths of space, other cosmic civilizations were undoubtedly taking note that this region now hosted a truly galactic-scale cooperative entity capable of defending itself against any threat the universe might present.